Hi, everyone. Welcome to Psychology and Spirituality, a Bridge to Better Life discussion. During our weekly episodes, we explore the intersection of spirituality and psychology, and as a result, we capture timeless wisdom contained in both fields. I'm your host. My name is Marcia Trajano, and I'm super excited to have Peter Hayes with me today. How you doing, Peter?
I'm doing well, Marcia. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. Peter, today's episode, we're going to focus on this journey from having to being. And I would like to explore with you this quite powerful psychological shift from focusing on what we have to really understand the concept, the idea of who we are. And you have to agree with me, right? We live in a world where success is often measured by the car that you drive, the how large is your home, or how educated, which school your children go to. Anyways, any type of um, external ideas of success, which is often seen through actually things that we touch, through possessions, right?
Right.
Through also the thought that those possessions equal to a sense of power, status, etc. And Peter, we rarely ask ourselves this much deeper question: what does it truly mean to be? Right? I can think of myself of Shakespeare, right, with Hamlet, to
Mhm.
be or not to be. But it's
Right.
really a very, very quintessential question that we should all be asking ourselves, and yet we don't. And if I think about it, I would like to visit this question, Peter, that I bring to myself. Right?
Mhm.
Am I living and working and producing and focusing on possessing or holding on to stuff? Or am I really on the road to becoming the person, not the person that I would like to be, but the person that I meant to be? So, if you allow me, Peter, a little more time, I would like for us to this my proposal today, right? I'd like for us to today to go on this journey together, this journey inward.
Right.
So maybe you can help us all, you, me, and all of us who are here, rediscover our own path to a sense of peace or purpose, or better yet, true fulfillment. So, how about we start by exploring this concept of a dichotomy of having versus being,
Mhm.
and how these concepts shape our own identities, right? And shape actually society through their societal norms. So, Peter, I don't know if you know this, but Joanna De Angelis wrote that our society, generally speaking, values more having than being. That's what she brings to us in several books. And you and I have even
Mhm.
explored a couple of books in a symposium not so long ago, right? Where
Yes. Yeah.
she brought those concepts really up front and center to the idea that, yeah, it's all about having and to the expense of being. And she even says that in some of her books, her work, that we are taught that from a very young age, that success is defined by that, by power, by external evidence of those achievements. So when we think about it, this focus does indeed shape our identity, and beyond that, it keeps encouraging us to have those external validation. We're happy when we can demonstrate that outward um, a sense of possession of power, etc. And
Mhm.
we're happier yet when the other person gives us those external validation. Oh boy, I admire you. Oh
Mhm,
boy, look at you, how amazing your house is, whatever. So from that perspective, those material success are markers of our sense of worth, which is quite
mhm.
bizarre, right?
Yeah.
Where we depend to understand what we are and how we are deserving by those external markers.
Mhm,
And the dichotomy here, if I may say so, is the sense that quite unfortunately, at the same time that I'm looking for this evidence of success, I actually go into a path of insecurity, right? Because, of course, possessions are ephemeral. They eventually, they even the pyramids from Egypt, as they defy that, even they are subject to dissolving at some point, right? So if I am to ask you, Peter, what would give me a sense of a lasting fulfillment, it is quite hard, right? What are your thoughts?
mhm.
How can we talk about this idea of having versus being?
I was thinking about my grandfather.
Uh-huh.
My grandfather grew up in a poor household. Um, his father left him and the family when he was 11.
Mm,
And he struggled to provide and take care of the family as best he could at the age of 11.
wow.
This led to him developing a very strong work ethic at a very early age.
Mm-hmm.
He became very ambitious. He left the area that he grew up in, went to another part of the country, worked for the government, and became successful over time.
Mm-hmm.
In many ways, he personified the American dream.
Absolutely.
The thing that I found interesting is he learned a lot, obviously. He was had a strong he knew how to read people, and he could see opportunities for business opportunities and things like that. But my
Mm-hmm.
mother told me something that I'll never forget.
Uh-huh.
She was talking to him when he was in his 60s. Or I think I remember the time period because we were having Christmas together in Arizona. And my grandfather said, in spite of everything I've done, it hasn't really made me happy.
Ah,
And I thought, wow.
what a powerful thing
Yeah.
to
I mean, I've got all kinds of information on his accomplishments. I've got
yeah,
a picture of him with Humphrey Bogart. He met um, former presidents and things like that. So this was somebody who did well,
yeah.
but it didn't make him happy.
It's almost like I don't know why I think of this, Peter, but we strive to be above that line that would call ourselves mediocre, right? That
Yes,
middle ground. And by all means, he who did not have the support of parents who would provide for his education, etc., he did it on his own, which is
right.
quite impressive, by the
It is.
way,
But
beyond
mhm,
that sense of mediocrity. But
mhm,
that did not lead to ultimately what we would call a sense of happiness, right?
yeah, because when we talk about having versus being,
Hmm.
you mentioned a few examples of what it means to have, you know, the career, the nice car, the nice house. Um, what are other examples?
Oh,
The partner that we want to
even
show,
yeah, you can go even for the terrible to say that as a woman, but the trophy wife,
the
right?
trophy wife, exactly. Is there such a thing as a trophy husband?
Ah! I think I could say yes, but let's
Okay,
outside
fair
of
enough.
this
All
conversation.
right. For the sake of this conversation,
Yeah, yeah.
well, let's say they're trophy husbands. But the
Uh-huh.
one that we, makes us feel like, wow, I really have this.
Yeah.
And yet the irony of that is what? The trophy wife doesn't stay young and gorgeous forever, or the trophy
Absolutely.
husband doesn't stay young and gorgeous forever. We
Yeah.
live long enough. And uh, as you were saying before, the things we have are temporary. Now, it doesn't mean they're terrible to want these things. Um, Not to go too much into this direction, but the gospel according to Spiritism
Hmm.
stresses that money is a tool.
Yeah.
It's not bad, it's neutral. It's what we
Yeah.
do with money that matters. So when we talk about having can be a process of learning. But as you were saying before, having is to be equipped with things that are temporary.
Hmm.
So if we are pursuing the temporary as if it's the only thing that matters,
Hmm.
then we're hanging on to a delusion. And I think my grandfather was not happy because he was motivated, driven, but what was really driving all that? Well, lots of things, but some of it was, I think, what you touched into about not feeling supported, not having a foundation of love.
Yeah.
Joanna de Angelis stresses a lot that the
Yeah.
pathway to being is through love. Children, for instance, flourish more when they feel loved no matter what, when they have a foundation of genuine love.
Yes.
Because when we feel truly loved, sure, we want to succeed, but if we don't succeed at something, does the world come to an end?
Yeah.
No. But if we don't feel loved, it may very well come to an end. Because if I put all of my energy into having something because I'm trying to make up for not feeling loved, for instance, then if I don't get that thing or it slips between my fingers, it might be incredibly painful and devastating because I don't really know what my self worth is.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so, what does it mean to be? Wow. Well, that's a tough one.
Our friend Shakespeare.
Sure. The interesting thing about Hamlet is Hamlet doesn't
Yes.
really know who he is. To be or
Yes.
not to be, that is the question. He's
Yes.
trying to figure out who he really is
Yes.
because, in effect, what has happened is in the case of Hamlet, because his father was murdered by his brother, Hamlet's uncle, who then
Yeah.
marries his mother, his uncle is kind of saying to Hamlet, yeah, I did this, so what are you going to do about it? And then Hamlet has to figure out what is he going to do about it. That's when he starts to become who he is.
Yeah.
But
And,
before that, he's in a state of paralysis at times. Sometimes
and
he's in
no,
paralysis.
yes, and it's really a question of transformative aspects of finding your own path, finding your
Yes,
own uh, self, right? And
right.
in this case, we as a society, and we're talking about not Shakespeare's time, but our
Mhm.
time today, we are more than ever, if you think about Peter, we have never, ever, ever, ever had so much at our fingertips, right? We
Yeah,
have
yeah,
technology, we have
mhm,
information, we have
right.
more time than ever. We even have the ability to do things with instruments and equipment. So there's this ease that society, through technology and other types of advancements,
Mhm.
have provided to us today. Yet we are met by a society that is plagued by anxiety, plagued by the sense of emptiness, that existential emptiness that maybe is what you're grandfather was talking about, right?
Mhm.
At the peak of his accomplishment, and he's asked and answers, "I'm not happy." And it's quite interesting because Jung brings that idea, the proverbial midlife crisis,
Mhm.
where most of us, men and women, and no matter what culture you're in, at the peak, right, at the peak of our achievements, we go through that midlife crisis, and sometimes we lose it all via divorce or
Mhm.
separation or
Right.
a terminal disease
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
a sense of reverse of your fortune, things that just break your concept of your castle, metaphorically speaking, that you created this castle that
Mhm.
protected you, that gave you the structure, etc., and all crumbles down. But
Mhm.
according to Jung, it's there is a very powerful message in this midlife crisis, which is that's the beginning of the true happy ending, which is that, and I put my finger here because I'm thinking of the triangle, right, where we go all to the peak and then go down
Right.
in as we age, because at that point
Mhm.
we are less and less concerned to be what people want us to be, and start to really be concerned more into who we really are, in the being, in this equation between having and being, right, in this pursuit of your authentic self, and the in the end, as Jung brings to us, gathering that sense of individuation, right, that
Yeah.
sense
Yeah.
of integrity. So it's not all bad, but it's not for the faint of heart, right?
Not for the faint of heart. You
Yeah,
have to be willing to experience that loss, whatever that loss may be.
yeah,
And
yeah,
in this case, loss is losing a effort to hang on to something that we can't really keep
yeah,
permanently. So to have is usually something that's temporary, and to be is finding our deeper, truer self, whatever that may be. But
yeah,
it's sustainable, and since um, since Spiritism, for instance, stresses the immortality of the soul, it is something you take with you into the
yeah,
future
yeah.
as well.
I can't wait to see my end of this existence, and come. This is hypothetical, right? At this
Mhm.
point, but in this idea, this eagerness for my end to get to that point, and looking back and says, look. And it's almost like this hypothetical checklist. Did I become more patient as a human being?
Mhm.
Check.
Mhm.
Did I become a gentler person? Check.
Yeah.
Did I help others in their moments of need? Meaning, have I become more compassionate? Check,
Mhm.
check, check,
Mhm.
right? And those are the things that somehow we don't have it because they're not tangible at the
Mhm.
forefront of our day to day. We truly focus on the idea of where we need to be. But I wanted to maybe ask, going back, but just ask,
Mhm.
what do you think, Peter, is in maybe in terms of giving example, what in what ways do our ways of living, right, our modern world, how what are the ways that this world that we're both inserted on
Mhm.
prioritize having over being? And I'm asking this because I'm really curious
Mhm.
to explore what are the consequences of that
Okay.
mindset, right?
Well, if you don't mind going back to trophy wives and trophy husbands for a moment,
Love it.
why
Let's
not?
do it.
Right? Okay.
Uh,
So I'll speak more as a man. Suppose
uh-huh.
there's a beautiful woman that some guy wants, and he meets her. Maybe he depending upon how he meets her and gets to know her and so forth, the
Yeah.
pursuit of her is what drives him.
Yeah.
Now, I'm being a little unfair. I'm focusing on more the desire to have and primarily to have. So she, you know, there's the physical beauty, there's what she represents and everything, but the emphasis on what she represents, whatever that may be.
Uh-huh.
And it's the pursuit. And then once one has made the conquest, if you will, or even this person becomes a partner, is that as interesting as when you still wanted this person?
Yeah.
Well, if you fall in love with that person and you find a genuine bond that is sustainable, then then it evolves into something else.
Yeah.
It's not about having anymore. Then it's becoming more like being. But if you're only really interested in this person because of what they represent or what they have, in this case, physical beauty, or it makes you know I look wonderful to everybody else. It makes people envy me if I get off on that sort of thing. But these are all external desires. The
Mhm.
external might be what motivates us and gets us going, but then over time, it's going to be the car that runs out of gas.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
unless there's a genuine, it's possible, but if there's a genuine connection that emerges,
Yeah, and so I'm thinking again. Sorry, everyone. This is terrible to be bringing that up, but we're bringing that up anyways, right? The idea of a trophy wife, a very we're going to go from very traditional, right? Let's put a la the madman, right? A la 1960s idea
oh
of
yeah,
a
with
very
the TV show Mad Men, yes, right.
the very, very successful man with a lot of means and pursues this woman to be the partner because the woman makes in turn him look good as well.
Right.
But I keep thinking that this is really a reference to a lot of our a cultural heritage, right? The
Mhm.
passing on the genes, passing on to the most power families. I'm thinking in terms of aristocracy,
Right.
where one family would get to the other with the
Mhm.
with the
Arranged marriages.
yeah, exactly, with the focus of keeping the territory or political clout, and
Right.
often not really linking the idea of what binds those two people should be love instead, right? So indeed, modern society
Mhm.
does place this quite excessive emphasis on that illusion of wealth, illusion of status, illusion of things that should, based on this emphasis, should equate with success and
Right.
happiness, but it does
Mhm.
not, unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
And the consequences of
Mhm.
that, Peter, I'm thinking here, there can be quite profound, and I'm talking about negative consequences, right?
Right.
Because it may lead to this fragmented sense of self.
Mhm.
The figure that comes to my mind right now is the terrible tale of King Charles now with his second wife Camilla, but the fairy tale first wedding, right? The first marriage with that
Diana.
beautiful wedding with Diana, and how both of them were quite unhappy, right?
Right. Right.
And it's very interesting how what everybody, because we're a society of voyeurs, right? The
Mhm.
TV and other channels in social media, etc., really put us to be voyeurs, but also we are judges of everybody else's ability to portray themselves as yay, right, like or dislike.
Right.
And I'm
Right.
putting my thumbs up or thumbs down for that.
Mhm.
And Diana, in this case, represented all that is beautiful and graceful and all of that. And yet it did not by any means led to happiness for anyone in the middle. So the consequence, as I said, is that at a minimum, a relationship that is fragmented, but at worst case, some expressions of unhappiness, such as neurosis and depression. In her case, right, she had a quite extreme case of
Hmm.
eating disorders, and it's just really a such a waste, right? Because I wonder what has happened to that entire family. If you think about as public personas that they are, but
Hmm.
how each and every one of them, in as I see it, I'm being the judge here, is just a group of very, very unhappy people, right? Emotionally speaking, they're all tainted, if you will.
Hmm.
So I'm thinking insecurities, conflicts, many, many multiple conflicts, the feelings of emptiness, right? All of those
Hmm.
just really are testimonials of the fact that having does not really lead to less fulfillment, right?
Right.
And in the case of that relationship, really, it was so superficial that you could see in everybody's eye in the media just crumbling in a terrible, terrible, fatal way. If you think about what happened to her,
Yes.
um, so if we keep on going further with that idea, Peter, maybe we can talk about the pursuit of power through material possessions.
Hmm.
How do you think they distort relationships with others? We are, and I love how Jonah DeAndrews uh, talks about us human as biosocial, right?
Hmm.
We have a spiritual nature, but we also have this biosocial, meaning biological and a very social component. As such, we crave relationships. How do you think that general context of where we are brought up, where we our society values those possessions of, how do they distort our ability to feel love, to love and feel loved?
Okay. Well, if we could go back to trophy husbands for a moment,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and if you'll allow me to traffic a little further in gender stereotypes.
Yes.
Um,
We are both forgiven
why
today.
not?
Everybody else here,
Sure.
please forgive us. This is just
That's
a
right.
flight of fancy
We're just having
for our
fun here.
conversation. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong. Is it fair to say that some women are attracted to men who exude power, money? So going back to the world of the TV show Mad Men, the
Yeah.
successful, upwardly mobile male is able to, get the trophy wife, as it were, and the trophy wife is looking for a guy who can help her feel that sense of security and
Hmm.
is somebody who provides, and she would rather be with someone like that than somebody who's barely able to get by and perhaps is not terribly confident and things like that. So assuming that somebody has bought into all of that,
Uh-huh.
what happens if he loses what he has? What
Yeah.
happens if he gets sick? To go back to what I think you were asking, what sustains a relationship? Well,
Hmm.
often wedding vows stress for better or worse, depends on the wedding vows one takes,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of truth to, or an important question that any of us could ask ourselves when we're in a marriage: what really sustains it? Are we with that person in the bad times as well as the good?
Yeah.
Do we take care
Yeah.
of our partner when our partner can't take care of themselves?
Or the opposite, right? Or are we
Do they take care of us?
incapable even to do that? Therefore, we inherently have a relationship that is self-serving, right?
Yeah.
And shallow. I think just this sense of there's no depth and of course no emotional connection, because
Right.
while those are the elements that will create really strong bonds between people, right? The
Mhm.
friends, family members, and yes, in the case of a couple. But when we have this self-serving
Mhm.
aspect to that relationship, it eventually, it may not be quickly, but eventually it just disintent um, dilutes and disintegrates, if you will,
Right.
right?
Because if people's drives or people's desires for
Mm-hmm.
a marriage or relationship
Mm-hmm.
are ultimately on a foundation of narcissism, I mean, that's
Yes.
a recipe
Yes.
for extreme unhappiness because,
Yeah.
um, if one is primarily narcissistic, then one's almost incapable of really
Yeah.
knowing how to care for others and live through all those moments that any marriage that lasts for any length of time is almost certainly going to go through.
Yeah.
Somebody's
Yeah.
need help. Somebody's going to get sick. There's always the risk of an economic change of some kind, and
Yeah.
you know, um, so that process of going from having to being would be okay. How do a couple adapt when things change? Do
Yes.
they adapt? If they can adapt, then they are truly able to become something that maybe is quite different from where they started.
Yeah. I just remember something that I read from Jonah DeAngelis where
Mhm.
she stated that true love, and as I say that true love, immediately I'm thinking of The Princess Bride.
Okay.
I love that movie, right?
Right.
Where he says, how can you get to you? And true love. Well, she states that true love
Mhm.
and authentic connection, Peter, what you're talking about, right? Those things that really can bind two human beings through thick and thick, whatever it may come to that, whatever to, and I'm talking about a couple here, but two
Right.
people are together, but they can weather the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Because
Right.
they have an authentic connection. But she said that this is so difficult to achieve, and she says that in the context of this world that prioritizes self-interest, and that it famously said external validation, right? I'm only as good as I have this approval of what I bring in my mask, my external accoutrement, right? But it's interesting because while she says that, I'm reminded, Peter, of the really interesting um, thought from Carl Jung, because many of us, right, many of us think that the opposite of love is what? Apathy, indifference, or
Hate.
hatred, right?
Hatred.
Those are the things that we can think like, if you don't, when you hate, you don't love. And he says, oh no, no, right? The opposite of love is power. And it's very interesting because if we tie with this idea that we're talking about a relationship that may not be conducive to true, authentic love because of an inherent desire that we all have, right? We all are ambitious to create a family, to do things, to provide the best. So,
Mhm.
in the context of a society that overvalues owning, possessing, than being, he says that love and power are truly opposing forces in human psychology. So,
Okay.
if you were to think about it, right,
Mhm.
the pursuit of having, according to this thought by Jung, is also rooted in the desire you know, to control, to be dominant, and which is power. And it's really all about assertion of my ego. How can I elevate my ego by that that desire to pursue things, whereas being
Mhm.
or loving, to use the words by Jung, it's really, that's when we see that as the source of true fulfillment, right?
So
We're talking.
yeah,
Mhm.
part of being then is we're not always in control.
Yes,
We're
yes,
allowing things to happen.
yes,
We're
yes.
because we're comfortable with that, not because we're afraid of it.
Yeah.
Whereas
So
power and pursuit of control is rooted in fear.
Absolutely, you get it. You know, hit the nail right there, because what we think about it is right.
Hmm.
There is a conflict, and we're referencing Jung, and we're referencing Joanna D'Angelis, talking
Hmm.
about the same topic, and they both recognize that there is this desire in the society that we live on, um, having and material possessions and power, etc., which are ego-driven behaviors,
Hmm.
and those ego-driven behaviors directly impact, negatively speaking, genuine love, genuine bonding, connection, and self-fulfillment, which would be the absolutely idea of uh, quoting back Shakespeare,
Hmm.
what it is to be, right? This
Hmm.
sense of self fulfillment. So the more, if we're thinking about, the more we focus on accumulating external possessions and asserting our sense of control, of power, the further away we are from truly authentic relationship.
Hmm.
But beyond that, Peter, we move away from the ability to connect with ourselves, to
Hmm.
that sense of self awareness and spiritual growth, right?
Right.
So it's a very interesting paradox that is brought in this idea, this discussion of having versus um, being.
Well, it's people living in a world of my will, my way. And
Yes.
as long as I am always in control and people do essentially what I want them to do, then
Yeah.
everything's fine, kind of thing. My father, my father had a sense of humor. And
Yeah.
he once said, I'll never forget this. He said, if you love something, set it free.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't come back, hunt it down and kill
I, I love it. I love
But
it. I love
the
it.
important
Yeah.
point about, part of what it means, to embrace love is that we really do have to accept who people are, where they are,
Yeah.
and respect their free will. You know,
Yeah.
Joanna de Angelis, I know there's I read recently that she's talking about, in cults, there's an effort to control, to try to dictate what people will and won't do. And, you know, it's
Which is a signal right there, right? Be aware.
right there. It's prevalent.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing I like about Spiritism is Spiritism strongly respects everyone's free will. So at a typical Spiritist center, people will
Uh-huh.
come, they may think this is great, they stay a while, then they disappear. Some may come back. They come, they go, some come and they stay. There's all kinds of possibilities. But there's no effort on the part of the center to pressure people or make people feel guilty for not showing up or coming back or so forth. You
Yeah.
know,
And there is no financial gains, right? Either
financial gain.
for yeah,
Yeah. So it's
for that
important.
organization. So it makes it much easier. You come in, and if there's value that you get by learning, by studying, by engaging in that, you stay. And if it's no longer valuable, you leave, and there are no strings attached, right?
Right, because when people, if they do decide to stay,
Mhm.
if they've truly done it of their own accord, their own free will,
Yeah.
that's a stronger bond, which
Yes.
is
Yeah.
interesting thing about what does it mean to be. Well, part of being, I would say, is when we're allowed to use our free will in such a way that we follow a path that really feels secure to us and sustainable to us, that we're
Hmm.
able to, we're not following a path because somebody's putting us under pressure to do
Yeah.
so.
Or the form, right? The famous idea of a form versus content, which is, if you think about it, it's what we're talking about, right? The heaven is the form, is the external,
Mhm.
tangible, versus being is the intangible. It's the content rich um expression of who we are.
Yeah,
And
and
yeah,
uh, well, I'm paraphrasing this a lot, but another point Joanna de Angelis makes in her work
yeah,
is being is sort of the equivalent of what Jesus talks about, the seed within us, that it emerges and we find who we really are over time, but it was always there. That
yeah.
potential was always there.
The essence was there.
The
Yeah,
essence was there. It just needs to come out in whatever way that spiritual process will make of it. But ultimately, we we have what we need within ourselves, but it may take quite a while before we really become or be who we have the potential to be.
yeah,
Maybe not even potential who we can and will be, but it could be through a very long process of making all kinds of mistakes and being that power mongering, egocentric narcissist, and many other things, and pursuing the having and only wanting to have no matter what. But eventually, we transcend that and realize that, okay, the material and the temporary is not really what I need.
yeah.
It,
So it leads us to maybe a final discussion here before we go today, which
okay,
is maybe the idea of true fulfillment, right?
true
When you
fulfillment.
say
Yeah. Mhm.
we have inherently in a very immature,
Mhm.
psychologically speaking, desire to own things, to accumulate things.
Mhm.
And if you think about historically speaking, that's the evolution of mankind, right? It was
Mhm.
from the hunter gatherer
Mhm.
society to agrarian society, so on and so forth. But the more we humans evolved, the more we're able to accumulate. And at
Mhm.
this point, if we were to think about, our society should be reaching a point where it's like, no. For example, and this is just an example that I'm thinking now,
Mhm.
Peter, is do you recall the symbol of upper education and really being a family of means and educated was this vast library of books, personal library of books?
Oh,
And right, and what has happened? Well, today with the proliferation of ebooks and Kindle types of ability to read, it's no longer there. We may be actually reading more than ever, but it's no longer visible to individuals outside of the own person that owns their own electronic library. This just as an example, and I
yeah.
keep thinking that likewise, we as we have this explosion of population, houses that are just vast. We're talking about 18 rooms, and so a garage of 20 cars. Into We start to see the decrease in size
Mhm.
because there is really no need for all that. So let's think about when we talk about this sense of maturity that highlights that idea of true fulfillment.
Hmm.
I would love for us to maybe for everyone here together with us, Peter, for us to explore what are the elements that demonstrate that true fulfillment. And to me, the one that comes very specific to me is that idea of inner growth, spiritual growth, right?
Hmm.
The
Matter.
sense of I focus on
Hmm.
growing and learning, etc., and self-awareness. Is there anything else that comes to your mind in terms of what are the
I think
ex- mm,
service is part of that, the willingness to help others in whatever
yeah,
way we can, even if it's just our families or it doesn't have to go out, it doesn't have to be
yeah.
about us trying to save the world or anything,
Well,
but
but it
rather
could be, right? It could
well,
it could be
sure,
charity,
charity,
compassion,
compassion.
altruistic,
In
uh,
other
al-
words,
right?
our fellow human beings really do matter. So
Yeah,
we act accordingly, we
yeah,
pay attention. We're not just wrapped up in our own little worlds. We don't isolate ourselves, which is not
mm,
healthy, and we make an effort to be available to certainly help others if and where we can,
yeah,
um, and just again be willing to go out of our way when it's necessary. Going back again to whether it's family or a partner in a marriage, are we going to make the time for that person if something happens in which we have to stop doing some of the things we were doing before
yeah.
or put them more on the back burner at least.
Yeah, be
Go
less self-centered and be
for
more loving, right?
Yeah.
In demonstrating compassion, kindness. I think the focusing on the being, Peter, can be just the practice of being present, mindfulness, right? Or the practice of self reflection, or even that self monitoring, self vigilance, right? Where we can look at it's like, why am I reacting this way? So just the practice of asking, checking on how we're feeling and try to understand the root cause of certain behaviors that we have.
Right.
Is this something that was thrust upon me
Hmm.
as part of my education, or is it something that's really reflective of who I am? Right?
Yeah. Once I've been put in a situation, how do I react and what
Yeah.
emerges as a result? The other thing I think is important to, excuse me, to stress in all this is while we just gave examples of attributes to pursue in the act of being, we
Hmm.
do have to go through that messy process of having, and as mentioned before, we have to be self-centered and egocentric and make lots of mistakes. That's just part of the process. And I don't think the takeaway from this is that we should be deeply ashamed for the mistakes we've made, but we do
Yeah.
need to hold ourselves accountable. We do need to be responsible. We
Yeah.
need to be emotionally honest. And yes, we may feel ashamed at times, but only to the extent that that motivates us to change. And if we can do
Absolutely.
that, because
Absolutely.
guilt is not the point either.
Yes. No, this is really good. I wanted just to
Mhm,
perhaps wrap up with putting some of the points that I remember, right? So today we discussed how there is this quite modern, but it's not isolated. We've been like this for quite a long time, but
mhm,
our modern focus is really all about having, and this is a societal pressure, and they really distract us from perhaps the deeper more meaningful aspects of life, which would
Mhm.
be equals to being, right? And every time I say being, I think of Hamlet. It's just funny. But we also talked about perhaps the idea that there are or there may be unanticipated negative consequences from living with this mindset as your compass, as your north, right? Which is if I focus all that I am into owning, to controlling, to power, etc., that interesting enough may lead to a sense of insecurity. It may
Mhm.
lead, as we mentioned earlier, examples in the royal family, Britain's royal family, right? Uh, Beautiful families, but superficial relationships,
Mhm.
apparently,
Mhm.
and that lack of a sense of true fulfillment, and that really pushes the counter to all of this is pushing us to really uh, acknowledge and recognize the importance of cultivating relationships that are based on love and being, right? And by that, what we mean is emotional, spiritual, personal growth, rather than perhaps owning, having material wealth, or
Mhm.
even doing everything you want or can to get that external validation.
Or trying
Because,
to control. It's like
right,
we
yeah,
we could all ask ourselves this question: Why do I need to micromanage everything around me?
yeah,
As if I
yes,
could.
yeah,
Why is that so important?
yeah. Absolutely. So, if you were to conclude all of it, Peter, we could conclude that true fulfillment really comes from your inner self, right? And your inner self, whatever you are,
Mhm.
grounded in sustaining values like kindness, love, etc., etc. So let
Right.
us all, this is an invitation, let us all really seek to cultivate peace, harmony, and focus on being, right? So that we may be more courageous and brave, even to look for self-reflection. How do we practice love? How do we practice trust in the other? How do
Mhm.
we even have faith in life itself, right? But with that, I just want to say I really enjoyed our conversation today, Peter.
Me
And
too.
as we come to an end of our time together, I just want to say thank you so much for being here, for joining us today, and for all of you who are here joining this conversation between me and Peter. We hope this conversation has inspired you to perhaps reflect on your own journey. And until next time, I just want to say stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep striving for the inner, deeper inner truth within yourself. And if this is the first time that you are here with us today, please note that our program, the Psychology and Spirituality Weekly Talks, are based on the work by Jonah De Angelis. And we hope that you found some nuggets of information that can help you expand your knowledge of spirituality and psychology. Peter, thank you so much. And
Thank
thank
you.
you, all of our sponsors, right, Peter? Mansão do Caminho, the United States Spiritist Federation, the International Spiritist Council, and AMI Brazil, the Brazilian arm of the Medical Spiritist Association. We'll be back next week. Until then, thank you so very much, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.